Check 1 2. Welcome. Yeah, thank you for joining us. It's been a minute since I've done one of these live chats, and I've been meaning to get on. There are always tons of topics to cover in the world of boxing, and I really just want to get into it. First of all, in a somewhat unrelated note, I just wanted to say rest in peace to Sly Stone of Sly and the Family Stone, one of the great innovative musicians of the late 60s, early 70s. Absolutely one of the best. You know, his name might not ring like some of the Mount Rushmores of music history, but in terms of contribution, impact, influence, all of that, it doesn't get much better than Sly Stone. And rest in peace to Brian Wilson, the mastermind and chief songwriter, and basically the main songwriter and main melody maker of the Beach Boys. He also passed away. They both passed away within a couple of days of each other at the age of 82. And obviously, last but not least, rest in peace to Mike McCallum, the body snatcher. He passed away as well. Look, there's no way of getting around the disaster that was former IBF champion, lightweight champion, Keyshawn Davis's weekend. The word that keeps on coming to mind when I think about what just happened and what we just witnessed is self-sabotage. I can't think of the last time somebody felt, well, I'm sure people fall out of grace somewhat frequently. But with Keyshawn Davis, this came right on the heels of him basically kind of being catapulted to the front of that whole group that he was never even a part of to begin with. So when people were talking, you know, the four princes, the slightly older Tank Davis, and then Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, Ryan Garcia. Shakur Stevenson was really the fifth, and he was always usually a division or two below those other four. But Keyshawn Davis, because of the way that he seems to be taking on the biggest challenges the fastest, and the way that he's kind of going about his business, and the way that he's, you know, bringing big crowds to his hometown of Norfolk, Virginia, he really became a beloved figure pretty quickly, to where I think that if you were to take like a favorability poll and to have him alongside Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, and others, he would probably rank higher in terms of the amount of people, the percentage of people who are pulling for him rather than against him. And you get all types of different reasons why people would pull for one fighter than another. But I feel like his favorability rating was through the roof after his back-to-back stoppage wins over Gustavo Lemos and then against Denis Berinchyk for the title. It's just unbelievable to me. I'm just thinking, was that weight miss of his own doing? Did he think that one up? Or was he advised by somebody who he trusts, who basically told him how to kind of play the game, rig the game? They're going to forget about this, you know, years from now. Everyone's only going to see the W against this opponent. The fight's going to go on. You're going to get paid. You're going to get a win. You've got this built-in advantage. You don't have to kill yourself to make weight. Look, I've got a cousin who I talk boxing with all the time, and he has his own theory. Before I give you his theory, I'd want to check in with him, but he's got his own hypothesis on how this got into Keyshawn Davis's ear. I want to give that person who he thinks might have been advising Keyshawn Davis the benefit of the doubt, even though he does seem to have been kind of in the wings and advising and hanging around with different people who've been, you know, I just got his permission right here. Both him and I are huge fans of Floyd Mayweather Jr. We are just kind of, this is speculation, but when you look at Floyd being in Ryan Garcia's camp for X amount of time, and then this happening with Ryan Garcia, not to say that he was advised on PEDs. I don't want to put any of that out there. I'm just saying that there are some coincidences in terms of who he seems to be advising, even if momentarily, and then an action that we see that fighter take in the near future. Look, just like we look at, it's different, but since Jaime Munguia tested positive for PEDs, all eyes went to like, hey, Eddie Reynoso, what's up? Like, this is something that is occurring with damn near all of your stablemates. You know, like everybody who you're training is at some point, whether they're, you know, training with you or if it's after they've been training with you, they're testing positive for PEDs. And we've had a few now in the Eddie Reynoso camp. I'm just saying that just like that might just be a coincidence. Floyd Mayweather working past with Keyshawn Davis, and then Keyshawn Davis pulling a move that we've seen Floyd Mayweather pull in the past. Look, we were just discussing it, and I'm not ruling it out, but I'm also, at this point, I'm not ready to say that I think that that's the deal. It might be the deal, but my counter was, I just feel like heads like Andre Ward, if Keyshawn Davis would have brought it to their attention, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm planning to miss weight. I'm planning to relinquish my title, renegotiate the contract. If he let Andre Ward know that that's what he was planning on doing, I could just imagine. I would think that Andre Ward would say, what the hell are you thinking? No, you don't want to do that. You're going to ruin your credibility. You're going to ruin all of this goodwill that you've started to build with the boxing community. You've got your hometown of Norfolk, Virginia. You know, you don't want to let them down. That's just what I would imagine Andre Ward would say if Keyshawn Davis said to him, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing with this Edwin De Los Santos fight. But what nobody considered, or must not have considered, is what if we can't renegotiate in a way that the fight proceeds? I don't think anybody, and because they interviewed Keyshawn Davis after he missed weight, he didn't sound like he was too disappointed nor surprised about it. He sounded like, hey, I'm ready to move up to the next weight, which sounded cheap at the time because, look, I'm a fight fan. I, work my butt off throughout the week, and I'm looking forward to some fights on the weekend. And I had that one on the calendar, like, oh, this one's going to be interesting. Edwin De Los Santos, gets to kind of redeem himself from that non-eventful fight against Shakur Stevenson, and Keyshawn Davis defends his title for the first time, and we could see if he could kind of one-up Shakur Stevenson in this common opponent that is Edwin De Los Santos. I was looking forward to this fight. So when I saw that Keyshawn Davis missed it by a few pounds, I was already super disappointed. Even if the fight went through, it already kind of ruined it for me. Because you see Edwin De Los Santos and how sucked in he was, and just knowing that he was the only one out of the two who truly had to suffer to make weight and to be a professional. To see Keyshawn Davis so flippant and dismissive and nonchalant about missing weight by that much and just making it sound like, hey, it's no biggie. That was like the first big red flag, but it sounded like they were going to try to renegotiate the terms of the fight. Benji's in the house. Subswell's in the house. Yeah, it's been a minute, man. Yeah, we hear. Sammy Silver's in the house. It was disappointing enough when he missed weight. And although when they first announced that the fight was off, that Edwin De Los Santos was advised by, Sam Leakowitz, a really good manager. And this is one of those rare cases where a manager goes out of his way and is demonstrating really in a high profile situation how much he's got his fighters back, life-wise, health-wise. A lot of people would have let that fight go through. Man, you better take your money, take your opportunity. Maybe you win this thing. Maybe you look good enough to have more opportunities down the line. Sam Leakowitz basically said, this ain't right. This ain't right. This is a setup. They're doing you wrong. Let's not do this. You get paid anyway. That's a big key here. Edwin De Los Santos still gets his full purse. It's really Top Rank who's left holding the bag. So they're pissed off at Keyshawn Davis now. So I don't think that Keyshawn Davis thought that they were going to call the fight off. I mean, this is his hometown. This is not what he wanted. So if they were planning on playing De Los Santos, right? On jerking him and just thinking that he was desperate enough to take the money and take any conditions that would be laid out, this backfired in such a visceral way where I was disappointed that the fight was canceled, but I was proud of Team De Los Santos for holding the line and standing on principle. Benji Tucker, yeah, manager of the year so far for sure. That was something to be applauded. And, Benji, you mentioned this. We hope that it sets a precedent going forward that the A-side fighter can't just assume that he could pull his leverage, that he could pull a fast one, miss weight, have a built-in advantage over his B-side, underdog opponent, and then the show go on because we all here to make money. Props to Team De Los Santos for turning that one down. Yeah, I'm mad that the fight didn't go through. I was looking forward to that fight. But I think that boxing is better off that didn't happen. Boxing's not better off that Keyshawn Davis was a non-professional and missed weight by that much. Again, I don't know if that was his own idea. I would love to know if it was his own idea or if he was advised poorly, but it backfired. And that wasn't even the half of it. The fight goes through, or the card goes through. Abdullah Mason versus Nakatila is raised to the top of the bill. That's the fight of the night, the main event. Abdullah Mason handles business. The Davis brothers, Keyshawn's brothers, both fight on the card, and I think it was Kelvin that lost to Nahir Albright, a former Keyshawn Davis opponent, one that pushed Keyshawn Davis. I remember being one of Davis's, if not his most competitive fights. I remember thinking that he lost a few rounds there. Nahir Albright beats Kelvin Davis, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Kelvin Davis, but he beats him pretty handedly. It's like a majority or split decision, something crazy. There's always one foolish judge. And then Keyshawn Davis and the other brother, Keon, go into Albright's locker room and assault Albright. Keyshawn Davis allegedly headbutt Albright, and they try to rough him up. And then it spilled out moments later after Albright was in an interview explaining what just happened in his own locker room. And while that's taking place, they come back out and come after Albright. I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? Like, look, first of all, Norfolk, the crowd must have been pissed. All the people who bought tickets, I'm sure some of them got refunds. Thank you, A. Pushkin, for confirming that it was Kelvin Davis. Norfolk is pissed off as it is. Some got refunds, some still went to the fight. Very small crowd, I'm sure, compared to what they were about to get if that Keyshawn Davis versus De Los Santos fight went through. So the whole night's a disaster. Top Rank is, just taking a bloodbath financially in this one. And to make matters worse, they try to get gangster with the opponent that beats the brother in that opponent's locker room while he's celebrating with his team. Like, these B-side fighters don't make that much money. There's very little room for error when you have opportunity. Nahir Albright got close against Keyshawn Davis. It didn't happen. He was really kind of lucky, fortunate to get this next fight against a Davis brother. And so he's got a lot to celebrate. This fight, this win can in some way change his life. And then that's to be disrupted because the Davis brothers lose their heads and can't keep their cool. I'm thinking, like, is there anything that you could have done more to self-sabotage the goodwill that you had built up over your last two fights in the boxing community? It was just super disappointing. I mean, he went from being a very appreciated, admired, like, it was a good story. Like, Pernell Whitaker's from, that area in Virginia. And here you've got the hometown hero, can't even get the fight. And eventually, by the end of the night, has to get escorted by police out of the building. That is an absolute disaster. And can he recover from it? Sure, this is boxing. People have short memories. All he needs really is a good win. But what I'm also surprised by is, why haven't we heard, it's Wednesday, why haven't we heard any sort of an apology or an explanation or just something to acknowledge the crowd that was supporting you and to say, I'm sorry that the weekend turned out the way that it was, that I ruined the event, because there's no two ways about it. Keyshawn Davis and not missing weight ruined the event. That event turned into like a fraction of what it was interest wise. I mean, I was barely interested. I didn't watch the card live. I watched the UFC main event, the UFC main card over that fight card. I came back because I'm a big Abdullah Mason fan. But the fight card itself lost all of its luster because of Keyshawn Davis, and we still have heard nothing but silence. I don't know what's going on in his personal life. I know he's dealt with stuff before, and I hope that he makes a comeback. I hope that, first of all, I hope that he does apologize. I mean, it's like, just be a grown up. Like, it's the elephant in the room. I mean, as soon as you hit the scene again, everybody's going to be asking questions. I mean, do you really just duck out into obscurity and disappear in the wake of what just happened like it didn't happen? That's just weird, because, you know, you look at his posts leading up to the fight, he was posting all the time, and it's almost weird to me. I almost like, was it a day of decision not to make weight? Because he was posting every day, like he was excited about this event. He was talking trash to Abdullah Mason, who wasn't even about to fight him. I'm like, yo, why are you picking on the rookie here? Like, this guy's like a prospect, a hot prospect, but a prospect, and you're talking about him like you want him to be your next fight. You're trying to get him to verbally agree to fight you next, and you're about to miss weight tomorrow? Like, what is that? What is that? Was it like, did he think on that day, what was it, Thursday before the Friday weigh-in, that he was going to miss weight, or that he was going to make weight? And then it wasn't until the next day where he realized, oh man, I can't cut the rest of this, because everybody knows he wasn't sweating. Bob Arum, his own, promoter, said, I don't think that he tried to even make the weight, because, fighters have a certain look and there's a certain intensity, a certain pressure when you're trying to lose those last 10, 15, 8, whatever, however many pounds. And they just think that Keyshawn Davis didn't give it much of an attempt. This is a huge PR hit, and I do hope he recovers, but I would like to see some contrition. I mean, I know that not every boxer has to be like a model citizen. I understand that this is the fight game, and these different fighters are cut from different cloths and have had different upbringings and all that. But man, like Keyshawn Davis, you had a lot of cachet and you've got a lot going for you. But right now, your name is kind of in the mud. Like, I would like to see him try to do something about it and show a little bit of humility. He's not 21 years old, 22 here. Like, show some humility. But yeah, like it was a disaster. I want to talk some Canelo versus Crawford, and we've known that this fight was going to take place. It was just promotional games where it's like, oh, Dana White's not going to promote the event. TKO's not going to promote the event. Well, it turns out they are. They worked out whatever they had to work out in the background, and it is apparently taking place on the same day as that UFC card in Guadalajara, Mexico, Canelo's hometown. So the UFC's got a Guadalajara event the same night as Canelo versus Crawford. So I'm sure they're going to make that make sense somehow. Well, I guess this is how they're going to do it. Unless they have like a bad time of the evening in Riyadh, they're probably going to schedule it. They haven't announced this part yet, but I'm guessing they're going to schedule it like they do the Usyk Fury fights, where it's an afternoon fight. So then that can lead into all the promotion for the upcoming UFC event later on that night. I think that that's how TKO and the UFC are going to work that promotional partnership out. Let me know what you think, but I think that this is going to be an afternoon fight since it's in Riyadh. They've done late night fights to make it work in the United States with a couple Riyadh cards, but I think that for this one, it's going to be in the afternoon. It's going to be like the same time as that you would get a UK fight. That's how I think this one's going to come together, and it makes promotional sense. Even though, man, I would love for just Canelo versus Crawford to be like a Saturday night fight, not a Saturday afternoon fight. Leave that to like the Usyk versus Dubois types. You know what I mean? The heavyweights for certain events. Canelo Crawford, it just feels like it should have been a Vegas fight. I feel like that feels like it would be the most appropriate place for that one to go down. Wait, is it going down in Vegas? Let me check on that. Maybe let me know if I'm wrong on this. I thought that it was in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, with this latest announcement, but give me just a moment to confirm that, because I would hate to be wrong and tell you guys something that wasn't going to be the case. I hope it's in Vegas. Again, it feels, from the Canelos to the Floyd Mayweathers to the Oscar De La Hoyas, Vegas was just a place to be. Oh, you know what? Forget everything I just said. You're right, Benji. Thanks for fact checking me on that. It is Las Vegas. I'm tripping. So I don't know what they're going to do with the September 13th fight taking place on the same day as that UFC card. So forget that. The fight is taking place in Las Vegas. Super appropriate. It would have been a little bit of a bummer if it did take place in Riyadh. Yeah, my bad about that. You're right, Benji. Kelvin did apologize on behalf of the brothers on Monday. And I heard that or I read that, and Nahir Albright, the opponent who got assaulted, said that Brian McIntyre and Terrence Crawford went into his locker room and apologized for the DB3 behavior. Let's see. Sammy Silver said, I hope it happens at Allegiant. Yeah, that's what they still haven't cleared up, right? The actual location. They gave the city, but not the venue. Allegiant would be cool. You know, I mean, fights don't take place at like Caesar's Palace anymore, right? That was like the spot in the 90s for the big Vegas fights. Then you had like MGM and Mandalay Bay and stuff. But yeah, Allegiant seems to be one of the mega places in Vegas for some of these biggest fights. But that's where they had first announced that it was going to go down, was in Allegiant Stadium. And then they kind of reneged on that. They said, no, in fact, it's not even going to be a TKO promotion. But now they went back on that. And it's weird. I'm almost starting to take some of these Turkey announcements with a little bit of grain of salt. I know he's got the money to make all this stuff happen. But this is like a couple times now where they announce some BS and then they feed it to Ring Magazine, who then gets picked up by Boxing Scene sometimes. I don't think Boxing Scene ran with that whole Canelo versus Jake Paul thing. But this is now a couple times where they have either announced something too early before it was actually, I mean, they just did it last week, right? They said what? Teofimo Lopez, or should I say Devin Haney versus Teofimo Lopez was signed. Then it turns out it was only signed by one party. It wasn't signed by Teofimo Lopez. So again, this is now a couple of times where we've gotten some bogus reporting that sounds like it's fact-based, but it turns out to have been like misunderstood speculation or partial information, which that's not supposed to be enough to report on. You don't hear Dan Rayfield declaring. People have different opinions about Dan Rayfield. One thing I can't say about him is he doesn't like jump the gun with what he says. Sometimes I like Mike Coppinger's reporting. I've seen it happen a couple times with Mike Coppinger. He came out and said, Spence versus Crawford was official. I remember the boxing community celebrating the announcement. Then it turned out it wasn't official, and Terrence Crawford took another fight against David Evanesian. And everybody just looks stupid at the end of the day. So this has happened a couple times now with Turki Al-Sheikh. But in terms of the fight itself, my gut tells me, and let me know if you agree or disagree, but my gut is telling me Canelo via close decision. Crawford rallying back in some of the later rounds. Crawford being a little reluctant to engage, and by rounds 3 to 5, you're wondering if Crawford can like hang with this guy, because now it looks like Canelo's kind of walking Crawford down. Crawford's not a defensive genius. He's an offensive genius, not a defensive genius. I'm wondering how Crawford's going to take Canelo's shots to the body. I wonder if Canelo can reliably hit Crawford with the jab. I don't think Madrimov and the way that he fought Crawford in that fight was very, very different. That's not Canelo. Canelo doesn't feint every 3 seconds with his feet and with his hands. He's not doing that. So much herky-jerky. That was something that Crawford took about 9 rounds to really get used to. Canelo is a patient hunter, right? He sometimes keeps a high guard, just slowly walking you down. Good head movement. Now, I will say this about Canelo. His head movement in the second half of fights isn't what it used to be. Now, it seems like his lower back gets tired or something. It's probably because he's in his mid-30s, but he does not move his head much after rounds 5 or 6. He used to be able to show good trunk movement and good head movement in the second half. Like, remember when he fought Daniel Jacobs, and there are other fights where he was smooth as well, Miguel Cotto. Nowadays, in the second half of fights, his head is right here, kind of to be hit. I just wonder if, even if Crawford falls behind on the scorecards, it would just be historically dramatic if Crawford puts it on him in the second half of the fight and drops, if he drops Canelo, let alone stops Canelo. But the way I'm seeing this right now is Crawford really being uncomfortable with when Canelo goes to the body. Now, I know Crawford's offense is such that if you commit to shots on him, he already knows what punch sequence he's going to deliver back, and he could do it in the moment. He's one of the best at that. If there was an attribute of Terrence Crawford's that I think is, sets him apart from the pack, it's his ability to In the rock, paper, scissors of boxing, you throw this, I throw this, you throw this, I throw this. In that dueling nature of the exchange, Crawford just seems to have the right uppercut, left hook. Whatever he decides to put together in that violent exchange is often the right code, the right combination to back the opponent up or to hurt the opponent, to drop the opponent in several different moments of several different fights. One of the times it was very abundantly clear was when he fought Mean Machine. And it's kind of crazy because one thing about Canelo Crawford that I'm wondering is, does Crawford truly think he could win this fight? I agree with you, A. Pushkin. I think Canelo is past his prime. I mean, even this last fight against, the super mover, which was almost unwatchable, William Skull. Canelo's never been the best at picking up his feet and just tracking you down. Sometimes he does better than others, but in his older age, in these later stages, he doesn't like to move his feet as much. He likes to step and slide. He's not moving his feet a lot to track you down and to pin you. It's just not, I don't think he feels like it's worth it. I think that he's trying to preserve some of that leg endurance for the back half of the fight in case, he gets backed up. But a couple things here. Does Crawford really think he could win? Because if you rewind a couple of years when people were first flirting with the idea of Canelo versus Crawford, even after Crawford beat Spence, Crawford would often say, he said it multiple times, there are weight classes for a reason. Nah, I don't think I'm interested in touching that. I don't think he's said that multiple times. So I'm thinking, has he worked it out logically in his head to where he really thinks that he could win that fight? Or is he just taking the bag and saying, let me see what I can do. We're going to assess it. If it turns out I need to get in survival mode and just make this a distance decision loss, then I might do that. Even though, look, that does not even seem to be, it's almost blasphemous to say that because it feels so far-fetched from Crawford's nature to suggest that in round 3, he will decide to, hey, let's circle the wagons and, let's get out of this one without being hurt, in the way that Jermell Charlo did. But I would have also thought that was so far-fetched from Jermell Charlo's nature. His reputation shifted dramatically after that Canelo fight. He was a lion in the truest sense. He was looking for the big challenges, fighting to become undisputed, let alone unify titles. This guy was daring, and he was getting better, and he was working on different aspects of his game. He was evolving. And then he just shows that he is not trying to mix it up with this beast named Canelo. That was kind of disappointing to watch. I don't think Crawford will do the same thing, but you really don't know until you're in there. Mike Tyson said that when his warrior spirit was broken, it wasn't the Buster Douglas knockout. He said that it was in that rematch against Donovan Razor Ruddock where he ate a couple body shots. And he said, it was in that moment that I knew I'm not the killer that I was. It was in an interview that he had back in the day. It's still on YouTube, but I think that these fighters have an idea of what to expect when they get into the ring. And sometimes it's not until they're in the ring where they can truly assess the plan going forward. So I'm just wondering, does Crawford really, 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 really think that he's going to beat Canelo? Like, I feel like he was so confident against Errol Spence that he would place a substantial financial bet. I wonder if he feels the same way or similarly going into this Canelo fight. Like, would he truly, if he was a third party, bet on himself against Canelo? Or is he just like, let's see, maybe he is eroded. Maybe Canelo is a shell of what he was. And then maybe I've got a shot. Maybe he's hoping that Canelo, is as faded as some believe that he is. So then he could have a shot. But at the same time, Crawford is 38 years old. Crawford's 38. And here we are talking about maybe Crawford can make a second half of the fight rally. Canelo's the younger guy here. He's the bigger guy. He's the younger guy. I know he's the one who's had tons of fights, but he's the bigger guy and he's the younger guy. You know what I'm saying? So if I had to bet now, I'm saying Canelo via close, competitive decision, a close decision where Crawford might do enough in the later rounds where some might think, oh, Crawford should have edged that. I think it's going to be a close fight. But right now I'm thinking that Canelo edges it. Let me know what you think. Benji said Ortiz's win over Madrimov made me question my instincts on this one. So was Virgil so aggressive against, was his aggression and his, hey, I don't see what the problem is with this guy. I'm going to jab his head off and keep on throwing these hooks. Was Ortiz's approach against Madrimov making you kind of go back and say, well, damn, Terrence, are you kind of feeling that way? Jermel said the weight gain affected his reflexes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he did say that. And it looked like he was slower because he's a wiry dude. And, you know, it looks like Crawford's going to be putting on weight. Crawford's a wiry dude. Like, is that going to help you? Like, I feel like Crawford's smart enough to know what's going to work with his body. But again, he's 38. You never really know when you start getting into your late 30s, approaching 40, like how your body's going to respond to this or that. Who the hell knows what Terrence Crawford emerges from a significant weight gain? We don't know. Like I didn't love what I saw from Crawford at 154. We're talking 168. Let's see. A Pushkins. Okay, so Canelo is extremely past his prime. If he doesn't hurt Bud within the first 3 rounds, he's going to lose badly. See, I feel like even if he doesn't hurt Bud in the first, well, you might be onto something, right? Because if he's not hurting Bud in the first 3 rounds, what happened in those 3 rounds, right? Was Bud avoiding him? Was Bud winning a jab battle? What happens in those first 3 rounds if it's not, and what do you mean hurt Bud? Because sometimes I feel like fighters hurt their opponent without the opponent looking visibly hurt. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you'll see somebody go to the body and then the guy doesn't like cringe, he doesn't fall, but you see him take a step back and kind of reset. It's like, I think I saw something, you know? That is something that I consider hurting Bud. It would depend on what's happening in those 3 rounds. Because if it's Canelo not hurting Bud, but winning the round behind a jab and behind like some patient pressure, then Canelo, I think, is still in the driver's seat. Because look, here's the thing. If Canelo starts getting a little bit tired, is Crawford at 38 able to put his foot on the gas enough to hurt Canelo? That's a big question. Can Crawford hurt Canelo? You would think yes, but like Triple G didn't drop Canelo when Triple G was near prime Triple G. You know what I'm saying? Like Canelo has one of the, to me, Canelo's got a historically durable chin. So unlike Canelo versus Bivol, where if Canelo looks like, oh man, I'm tired of throwing punches right now. It's like the 5th round. He's like, I've got some arm fatigue. Let me just take a step back. Bivol is big enough where he could just stick out 6 punches because he's like 6'1", 6 feet tall, and he's got the longer reach, and he could just kind of back Canelo up and make Canelo pay for those moments of fatigue. I just wonder if Canelo, if he's slightly fatigued, is able to find more of a safe haven against Crawford, a greater safe haven against Crawford than he had against Bivol, at least, even though Crawford's got the famously long 74-inch reach, right? He's a shade taller than Canelo too. That shouldn't be discounted, but you know, so was Jermell Charlo, significantly taller. But can Crawford put his foot on the gas if he senses a little bit of fatigue on Canelo, or does he still have to respect him enough to where he can't really push the issue too much, like a Dimitri Bivol can, where Bivol can maintain range while opening up with 6 punch combinations, you know? Let's see. Yeah, A. Pushkin says Bud is chronologically older, but Canelo's body is physically older. True. He began his pro career at 15, been in a lot of wars and over 60 fights, certainly. I think A. Pushkin also said, I think Bud believes that Canelo is beatable now and that he slowed down. That's why he probably changed his mind, similar to how Sugar Ray viewed Hagler. You know, it's possible. And if Crawford is really believing and really thinks that he could beat Canelo, then I feel better about his chances. But if he's like, you know, then it probably ain't gonna happen. Let's see. I want Benji Tucker said, who would you take, Crawford or Plant, if they were to fight? I think Plant, and Resendez over Crawford. I can't. I don't want to say that. Like, is Resendez that damn good? No, I think Crawford over Resendez. I think Crawford over Resendez. I think Crawford has more belief in his tools. Look, Plant was exposed to me. He was exposed as being extremely one-handed, whether it was because of injuries or otherwise. I've seen other fights where Plant was one-handed, and I was like thinking, he can't be that damn one-handed, is he? But well, here's the thing. After seeing Crawford versus Madrimov, like, I don't think Crawford runs the table at 154. Like, if Crawford were to fight, say, Fundora and Tim Tszyu and Virgil, and pick one other 154 guy, a Jermell Charlo, or you could even say Bohachuk, I don't think Crawford beats each of them. Like, Boxing Wave points this out a lot. 154 is probably the most competitive division in the fight game, and has been for the past like decade, right? Even when you go back and you look at the Jarrett Hurd, Erislandy Lara, the younger Charlos, the Austin Trout, Miguel Cotto, everybody loses to somebody, right? Nobody is good enough to, you might win this belt, but you're not going to run the table. You're going to lose to one of these guys, even though Jermall Charlo never lost to, but he was also not fighting all the guys. He just fought like Julian J. Rock Williams, but that's another guy who was there at that time. And, this is coming right on the heels of Alfredo Angulo and Joel Julio, some other really good fighters, but Erislandy Lara, lost to Hurd, but beats other guys. 154 ever since that has been this kind of like carousel. Jarrett Hurd beats Lara. J-Rock beats Jarrett Hurd. Jason Rosario beats J-Rock. Jermell beats Jason Rosario. It's just been this thing. So I don't think could Crawford beat Brian Castano, even though we haven't seen Castano since, what was that, 2022? Damn, something like that. Where the hell is Brian Castano? I saw on his Instagram that he was making a return, but it's like, where's that at? I don't think anybody, including Virgil Ortiz, runs the table at 154. And you still have like Jesus Ramos, Erickson Lubin, like 154 has got guys who will win some and lose some in that and throughout that division. By the way, I'm glad that they made the rematch between Fundora versus Tim Tszyu. Can't wait for that one. A lot of people think it's a bad idea for Tim Tszyu to get into this one right after beating somebody as low level relatively as Joey Spencer, right? Coming off those back-to-back losses against Sebastian Fundora, where he was a bloody mess through no fault of his own. It was an elbow, and he fought competitively. And then you had, Keith Thurman is also 154. But then he got stopped badly by Murtazaliev. So is it too soon for Tim Tszyu to take on Fundora? I feel like if he could pick up from where he left off, because I thought in that second round that Tim Tszyu was probably on his way to beating Fundora. I think I would like Tim Tszyu's chances, but is Tim Tszyu the same guy that he was going into that into that fight against Fundora? Is he the same guy today after getting stopped badly, dropped several times against Murtazaliev, and after that bloody mess against Fundora? I don't know. But yeah, I love 154. So Crawford, I think, is doing the right thing. I don't think right now for Crawford, it would have been worth it to try to start unifying and becoming undisputed at 154. Because quite frankly, I don't think it would have happened. I think he would have lost to one of these guys. It could have been Fundora. You know what I'm saying? Like, Fundora will beat a lot of guys. So he's making the right move, picking up this huge payday against Canelo. And again, I just wonder if he really thinks that he could do it. But yeah, I think I would favor Crawford over Resendez. And it's weird because I almost feel more comfortable favoring Crawford over Resendez than I would favoring Crawford over Plant, even though Resendez just beat Plant, if that makes any sense. But yeah, that's enough, I guess, Canelo versus Crawford talk for right now. Let's move on to, I just wanted to make a quick comment about Wardley's amazing comeback KO over Justice Hooney. I was this close to picking Hooney in my preview, but I said, look, Hooney's going to win some rounds, but I think that Wardley's going to stop him in the back half of the fight. I just don't think Hooney is going to be able to avoid the big right hand for the whole 12 rounds without getting dropped or even stopped. So I picked Wardley via second half stoppage, and that is what happened. But I didn't think Hooney was going to be dominating Wardley to the degree that he was up until the point of the knockout. He was whooping Wardley like Wardley might have won like 1-2 rounds, something like that. He was getting his ass kicked by Justice Hooney. It was just that one exchange, and was it really a lapse? Yeah, he exchanged in the middle of the ring, but it wasn't things that he wasn't doing before. Like he was backing Wardley up, with his jab, with his hooks, with his level changing, with his, shot, with his straight shots to the body. He was just putting a beating on Wardley. And there were different times in that fight I was wondering, is he going to stop Fabio Wardley? But then Wardley clocked him with that short right hand, and that was it, right? But I have to say this, and I don't feel like it was said enough. That was a short count. Like, they showed Justice Hooney land on his back. And then they flashed to Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn, like their reaction to the knockdown. This is like in the first half of this is in what should have been the first half of the count. I'm talking 1 through 5 in that 10 count. They flashed back to the action, and I thought that they might have been on 7. And the ref is waving his hands, and I'm like, damn, that seemed like a quick count. Like, I haven't done this yet, but I'd be curious if somebody like did the Wilder versus Fury in their first fight, second knockdown, final round, and started the stopwatch, right? Right at that moment, Tyson Fury hits the canvas at the same time as Justice Hooney hitting the canvas. Go. 4, 5, 6. I actually think Justice Hooney got up faster than Tyson Fury did. You know what I mean? But it seemed like a quick count. It didn't look like Hooney was arguing the stoppage. His people didn't seem to be arguing it. So maybe, if they let it continue, he would have just gotten hurt worse. Maybe he was in no shape to continue, but it was a quick count. It was a quick count, right? Who would I like to see Wardley fight next? Martin Bakole, F.A. Ajagba, any one of these guys who are flirting with the top 10-ish Frank Sanchez, if his knee is recovered. I don't want to see him fight any of the guys who either are in the title mix or should be getting title fights. Like, Ajit Kabayel is not yet challenging for a title, but he should be. He, to me, is like next up after Joseph Parker. But I would like to, there are a lot of guys I'd like to see Wardley fight. You know who I'm mad hasn't fought in a long time? Johnny Rice, the guy who did he upset? Guido Vianello. But what's up with that guy? He's kind of like a spoiler type of guy, but I'm like, he just beat, Vianello a couple years ago, and I haven't seen the guy since. He was the guy who spoiled the whole Michael Coffey party. Remember when they were trying to hype him, Michael Coffey, and then he got stopped twice, I think, by Johnny Rice, and then he got stopped by a bunch of other guys. Jared Anderson. No, I've got to see more out of Jared Anderson before he gets in there with Wardley. I don't think he's got the confidence, although he might mess around and win that one. He's a little bit of a wild card. I just want to see Jared Anderson fight another guy we know. Like, do Jared Anderson versus Guido Vianello. Or I would really want to see Jared Anderson versus Richard Torres. I would like, there we go. Wardley versus Richard Torres. Moses Atama. I'd rather see Moses Atama fight one of the old guard guys. And that's one of the things I was going to speak on, is that they just made Moses Atama versus Dillian White. So Dillian White's had like one comeback fight since his, what was his last knockout loss? He had like a short PED suspension, which he was since vindicated from. And before that, it was like a knockout loss. No, it was the win over Jermaine Franklin. And then he tested positive before what was supposed to be his rematch against Anthony Joshua. And I think he's had maybe 1-2 fights since. Was it 1 or 2? But Dillian White's on a bit of a comeback trail. He's on the back half of his 30s. I almost think that they're doing him a little bit dirty. I'm surprised he signed up to fight Moses Atama. I thought he was just going to sit out and wait for Anthony Joshua or retirement. I thought that that's the time that Dillian White was on. I didn't think he wanted to take on this like 20-year-old phenom in Moses Atama. But, Dillian White is experienced. Moses Atama's not really. If Dillian White pulls that one off, that would be that'd be a pretty damn big upset, wouldn't it? Which, by the way, it's crazy. Richardson Hitchens versus Kambosos takes place this weekend, and Richardson Hitchens is like a 10-1 favorite. They've got Kambosos like at a plus 1100, an 11-1 underdog. But I wonder what the odds are. I haven't looked. Itama versus Dillian White odds. By the way, that's got a pretty good undercard that we might get into a little bit as well. But let me just take a look at this Itama versus White odds. I'd imagine that Moses Itama is going to be a big favorite. And I'm not going to, if I don't see it on odds checker, I'm not going to look too deeply into it right now. Yeah, I don't see it yet in odds checker. But I would imagine that they're going to make Moses Itama something like a plus or a minus 600, 500. I think that the betting odds are going to heavily favor Moses Itama. But in terms of Fabio Wardley, Richard Torres, it would be, you're saying that Fabio Wardley would be a huge step up for Torres. Would Torres be a step up for Wardley? Or do you see Frazier Clark and Justice Hooney as being pretty much on Torres's level? You know what was a big step up for Torres was his last fight against Guido Vianello. I looked at that as being close to a 50-50 fight. I really thought Vianello had a good chance at outboxing Richard Torres. I mean, Vianello fought a dead even fight with Efe Ajagba. So if a guy like Vianello fought evenly with Efe Ajagba and Torres just beat him handedly on the cards, like, do you see Efe Ajagba as being a step up for Torres? Because again, he fought Vianello pretty evenly. And is Fabio Wardley a step up from Efe Ajagba? I can't say that. Ajagba, just fought the draw with the big dude. What's his name? Martin Bacoli. And Ajagba lost via decision to Frank Sanchez, narrowly beat Guido Vianello. I don't know. There are a lot of heavyweights around that range, and I kind of look at them as being in the same class, more or less. Wardley versus Ergovich sounds like a good fight. See, I look at Ergovich, like Ergovich should be in another class than Wardley, right? Ergovich, for the longest, they were talking about him like he was just the unsung hero of the division. They made him the IBF mandatory for so long. He won that very disputed, close decision against Zhili Zhang. Then has the total meltdown against a very confident, willing to walk through fire Daniel Dubois. And then, Ergovich has since come back and beat Joe Joyce handedly. Joe Joyce had his moments. What about Wardley versus Joe Joyce? Or would that just be sad? I kind of feel like that would just be sad. What would you think about Wardley versus Derek Chisora? Like, I think that these top 6, top 8 guys are a step too far. Here's the thing, man. Wardley was losing badly. Bomb Squad. No, Deontay Wilder's got to beat somebody first. Before Wilder fights anybody, I just want to see him beat like somebody, But before he fights somebody, he's got to beat anybody, right? Just beat somebody to fight somebody who we know. Hey, Eric Gomez is in the house. Thank you for coming through. But yeah, Wardley versus Ergovich. Ergovich should be a step up from Wardley. Like, look, Wardley was losing just about every round to Justice Hooney. Like, he pulled a rabbit out of his hat, but like Frank Sanchez before he tore his knee, I think beats Wardley pretty soundly. Now, Wardley does have a few tricks in how he throws his punches, but I mean, Frazier Clark arguably could have pulled out a close win in their first fight. So, Wardley, like Bomb Squad, like Deontay Wilder, has that one get out of jail free card. If you could land this, and you could just like forget that you lost these last 6 or 7 rounds. Andy Ruiz might be done, right? Because he just got gifted a draw against Gerald Big Baby Miller, who was supposed to be the guy fighting Fabio Wardley before he pulled out due to injury. But Andy Ruiz busted up his wrist in that fight. Remember, it was all fat and stuff, and a lot of people thought Big Baby Miller should have gotten that win over Ruiz. Prime Ruiz is certainly done. We'll see, you know, how much he wants to make more money in the fight game and what he's willing to do to show that he's ready for some more high-profile fights. But right now, I mean, his wrist should be healed up. It's been nearly a year. It was in August that he fought Big Baby Miller. Wilder versus Ortiz 3. That feels like it should, it's almost appropriate. We haven't seen Luis Ortiz, King Kong, in the ring since his decision loss to Andy Ruiz. A. Pushkin said, as long as Wilder is training with Malik Scott, he will never win another fight again. Yeah. And he did beat Hellenius under the tutelage of Malik Scott. But let's shift gears. I want to talk a little Lomachenko. Lomachenko retires. He's a Hall of Famer. Let me just start out by asking the question, random question, but I think that is pertinent because we never got this fight. And it's not Lomachenko versus Gervonta Davis. That would have been a favor to Davis, I feel, if Lomachenko fought a future generation fighter like Tank Davis. That would have been like icing on the cake to even accept that fight. But Mikey Garcia, who had a more decorated career, who had a better career, Mikey Garcia or Lomachenko? Again, I look at Lomachenko as being a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like y'all, you know, I'm sure look at Lomachenko as being a first ballot Hall of Famer. I also look at Mikey Garcia as being a non-Hall of Famer. Mikey Garcia is in the rare club for me where he's a 4-division champ, but not a Hall of Famer. And I feel like it's because he doesn't have enough high-profile wins. I think that, you know, you look through Mikey Garcia's career, I thought his best wins were against like Robert Easter, maybe Adrian Broner. I mean, he beat the Salitos. He beat did he beat both Rocky, Rocky Martinez and Juanma? Did he knock them both out? I know he knocked Juan Manuel Lopez out. So Mikey Garcia won belts at 126, 130, 135, 140. But instead of fighting Lomachenko, which would have been a generationally important fight for the era, he's, you know, calling out Errol Spence at 147. And that idea sounded so crazy to me that it had me thinking, well, shit, him and his brother, Robert Garcia, they must know something that I'm not aware of. Like, they must see something in Errol Spence that they could exploit. Maybe he's onto something. Like, I didn't pick him to win. I thought Errol Spence was going to win the fight, but I'm like, but maybe he's onto something. And then he gets in there and can't win a round against Errol Spence. I'm like, oh, damn. You know, damn, Mikey, like, why couldn't you just stick around and make your be a little bit more reasonable and realistic? I get like shooting for the moon. I mean, we've seen fighters jump 2 divisions up to try to, you know, Kell Brook versus Golovkin. And usually it's very ill-advised and it ends up terribly, like Rigondeaux going up to fight Lomachenko. While we're on the Lomachenko topic, he had no business in the ring with the younger, much bigger Lomachenko, and it didn't go well at all. But who had the better career between Lomachenko and Mikey Garcia? Again, is it possible that one person is the Hall of Famer, but the other guy had the better career? And it depends on, I guess, how we define better. Ventru is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Jay Foreman in the house. Thank you for coming through. What's up, guys? Yeah, it's been a minute. Let's see. Yeah, Mikey's belts were a mix of actual belts and vacant titles. For instance, when he unified at 135, he unified taking Robert Easter Jr., who at the time was still undefeated, taking his belt. I remember at the time being really excited about, damn, Mikey Garcia is about to go, you know, he's about to fight Robert Easter. I don't know, man. That's a competitive one. I remember feeling, damn, Mikey Garcia is going up to 140. Look, I know Adrian Broner's got his flaws, but Mikey Garcia is going up to 140 to fight Adrian Broner. And I was just super disappointed by Broner's performance. He was like, you know, on his bike, like the whole fight. It was a terrible look. But at the time when they, you know, going into the fight, I'm like, flip a coin. Like, you know, Broner might just have this, you know, Mikey Garcia just sitting on the outside and able to pot shot him, you know, from distance, from range, you know, being the bigger guy with the probably the faster hands. You know, I thought that maybe Mikey Garcia would would have been out of his depths against Adrian Broner. So Mikey Garcia had some had some wins that going into the fight, it's like, oh man, this might be competitive. Now, I thought he would beat Salido, and he did. He dropped him multiple times. I think he ended up suffering from a cut and they stopped the fight, but he was way up on the scorecards. To answer your question, Benji Tucker, who's Loma's best wins? Like, with Loma's best wins, let's see. Gary Russell Jr. might be Loma's best win. Honestly, it might be that third career fight against Gary Russell Jr. The next best wins would be, in any order, I think, Nicholas Walters, Jorge Linares. I would say Luke Campbell, but no, Luke Campbell wasn't as dangerous as Nicholas Walters. Again, the Rigondeaux one, I almost throw that one out. It's a name, big name, Hall of Fame name, but contextually, nah. He's the only person to stop Kambosos. But it would be Gary Russell Jr. I mean, at the time, Gary Russell Jr. was looking like a young phenom, probably had the fastest hands in the game. And Lomachenko, it was a close fight, but he beat Gary Russell Jr. And all the shine and all the hype that was kind of taken away from Lomachenko when he lost that, kind of rugged Salido missed weight. But in Lomachenko's second career fight, he loses that decision to Salido. Salido, again, missed weight, was hitting below the belt, roughing him up the whole time. Lomachenko wasn't really used to that style, evidently. But everything that he lost in that loss to Salido, he gained back and then some by beating Gary Russell Jr. because it wasn't too much longer. It was like another 2 fights. And then they already, like 6 fights into his career, started flirting with like pound for pound rankings. And that's another reason why Lomachenko is like a Hall of Famer, because these things do matter, because he had been like a top 3 pound for pound guy for like a few years, pretty much up to his loss against Teofimo Lopez, right? So Russell, his best win, followed by Nicholas Walters, Jorge Linares. I wouldn't say Pedraza, Luke Campbell, Nakatani, Kome. Jermaine Ortiz is a good win, but Jermaine Ortiz is a good win. That is a good win. It was close. It really could have gone either way. A lot of y'all probably think that Jermaine Ortiz might have done enough to either earn a draw or a win. Close fight. And then the stoppage over Kambosos, which he retires on. He had a close fight with Devin Haney. If he would have beaten Haney, that would certainly be a top 2, top 3 win, obviously. Same with if he had beaten Teofimo Lopez. But, when he was like really aging and at 135, the cream of the crop in that next generation, Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, the game caught up to him. You might think that he beat Haney. I don't. But even if you do, the game caught up to him. He wasn't distanced from the pack anymore. The other thing that makes him a Hall of Famer is his amateur career, having that like 396-1 career record. He had those first 3 fights where he beats Russell in his third fight, but then he goes on that run where he turns into Nomaschenko. He stops Rocky Martinez, Nicholas Walters quit on the stool, Jason Sosa, I believe, quit on the stool. Did Miguel Mariaga, who was a pretty good fighter at the time, had only like 1 or 2 losses. Did he quit on the stool too? Rigondeaux quit on the stool. But basically for like a few fights, Lomachenko kind of turned into like a Roy Jones of that time, right? Kind of somebody who just looks like they are so much more advanced than the rest of the pack in their weight class that it's like child's play, to where he's standing in front of his opponents like he's Pernell Whitaker, slipping punches while making his opponent look like they're surrounded by 5 Lomachenkos. You know what I mean? It was like something where it was Lomachenko in a bunch of mismatches like Jason Sosa, Miguel Mariaga. Again, decent fighters, had no business in the ring with Lomachenko. Nicholas Walters, that was a quality matchup. The guy had just recently knocked out Nonito Donaire. He did have a draw against that. I, in fact, think Nicholas Walters' draw might have been against Mariaga, which should have been a Walters win via decision if you've seen that fight. But Lomachenko basically hits this stride where he makes the opponents look like child's play. And that's when they pretty much had him. Most people had him. Well, most of the networks and, the publications and such had him as the best or second best pound for pound fighter in the sport by that time. So that is what I think is really stamping him as a Hall of Famer. Then he goes up to 135 where he hits more turbulence, gets dropped by Linares. But he also started picking up injuries. He was, injured around the time of the Pedraza fight. Then he knocks out Anthony Corolla. One of his best knockout wins was against Corolla. So Lomachenko has that win over Russell. But if you look at Mikey Garcia's career, I don't know. I can't say he's got more good wins. Here's another thing about Loma. Aside from lightweight, he didn't unify titles in the other divisions. Like when he was a 126, then 130, then 135. He was only the WBA champ, I believe, in both of those divisions. He had one belt in each. So it's not like he was unifying titles before he got to 135. But he did a lot of heavy lifting at 135. So I don't know, 3-division champion, historic amateur fighter, and had a period of his career where he was so separated from the pack talent-wise that he made his opponents look like amateurs. Let's see. No. Gary Russell wasn't 2-1 when he fought Loma. Loma was 1-1 when he fought Gary Russell. Gary Russell was an established dude. He wasn't a champ yet. He hadn't knocked out Johnny Gonzalez for that WBC 126-pound title. But at the time of the Loma fight, Gary Russell was 24-0. He was 24-0 when he fought Lomachenko. So, I mean, Gary Russell was a real guy at that time. It was Loma who was 1-1 going into the Russell fight. Let's see. Eric Gomez says, the thing about Loma, even in his losses, he did not have a bad loss. Each of his losses were that looked like it could have almost gone either way. Like he lost by a round, maybe 2, something close though. I always wonder like how him versus Tank Davis would have gone. Just because there's no margin for error against Tank Davis. I mean, I know we got what we got in that Lamont Roach fight, and we'll see what happens in the rematch, but just the danger level and knowing that Lomachenko is in there with somebody who's that destructive. I mean, look, Teofimo Lopez is a destructive cat there, right? I mean, and Lomachenko fought 12 rounds with him. But I would have loved to have seen him versus Tank Davis. But just as much at the time, I was salivating for Lomachenko versus Mikey Garcia. I just felt like that fight had to happen because Mikey Garcia, if you remember, was putting guys lights out, at 126, 130. And again, I mean, at 140 was backing Broner down. Now, by the time Garcia got to 140, it was kind of too late because, Lomachenko wasn't going to go beyond 135. So I looked at the fight as being dead in the water at that point. But at 135, 130, that would have been the sweet spot. That would have been the time to make that happen. Yeah, Tank versus Loma, I feel would have been great. And it would have just been shocking. Like, look, I was shocked to see Tank Davis knock out Leo Santa Cruz in the way that he did. I wasn't ready to see that. Like, Leo Santa Cruz was one of these durable guys who's able to, like, land a few hundred punches, eat a few hundred punches, and be okay. To see him get knocked out like Francis Ngannou got knocked out against Anthony Joshua, that was kind of scary. I'm like, oh, damn. A Pushkin confirmed Mariaga did quit on the stool. Yeah, Mikey might have been too big for Loma, but there were a couple times where they did cross paths divisionally. I think at 130 for a small time, and then at 135. But the thing is, as soon as Mikey Garcia beat Robert Easter, he started setting his sights on 140. You could tell he was like kind of big game hunting by that point and wasn't interested in like unifying more belts and taking out the rest of the 135-pound division. But it's just a shame that promotional politics got in the way of Mikey Garcia versus Lomachenko. I just feel, again, like it was a historical, generationally historical fight that never happened. Jay Foreman said, I get that guys want money, exposure, and to dream big, but I wish more fighters stayed in the weight class and focus on beating the new opposition that's coming up. I agree. See, Mark, thanks for coming through. Mikey and other champs didn't want Loma at 130. I didn't get that sense from Mikey, but then again, Mikey was kind of already messing with 135 by the time Loma was really planting his flag there. But I didn't think Mikey was ducking Loma. I never got that feeling. I looked at Mikey as being such a badass. Now, I will say this. Mikey did have that long layout, but that was really before Loma emerged. Loma was just starting to come up when Mikey Garcia was out of the ring for like more than 2 years. Remember that? And then he came in and he wasn't as skinny when he returned after those couple of years, and he started fighting at 135 at that point. So he was done with 130 when he had that multi-year layoff. I was super disappointed that he was out of the ring for that long, and I was excited to see him back. And that's when he beat guys like, eventually Robert Easter Jr., Adrian Broner, eventually Sergey Lipinets up at 140 for a vacant belt at that time. That's how he became a 140-pound belt holder. But yeah, there are a couple four division belt holders that I don't think are necessarily Hall of Famers. Adrian Broner somehow got his hands on a belt in 4 different divisions. I mean, you want to thank your lucky stars / promoters on that one to set you up for 4, like basically 4 belts without even beating a champ, aside from what he did at 135 and kind of 130. But yeah, 132, 130 and 135, beating, what was it, Antonio DeMarco, I think. But 140 and 147, AB had no business touching belts in those divisions. He did beat Paulie for that belt at 147. Paulie did have a belt. AB won that close. Could go either way fight. So, okay, let me stop hating on AB for a little bit. But AB is a 4-division champ that should not be a Hall of Famer. And I kind of think the same applies to Mikey Garcia. But yeah, we're about to wrap this one up, man. I want to thank everybody for coming through. Again, Moses Atama versus Dillian White was made official a few days ago. I'm looking forward to that fight card. I kind of think Dillian White's about to get knocked out viciously. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like if Atama kind of jumps on him and hurts him in the first couple of rounds and just does extreme damage, and if it's a short night. Jaime Munguia, I believe, is waiting for the B sample, right? They just took the B sample of his PED test. We'll see how that one turns out. If I had to guess, I think it's going to be positive for PEDs as well. That's usually how it goes, but we'll see what happens there. But check out a couple of these undercard fights on Itama versus Dillian White. One of them involves what is it? Oh, Nick Ball, one of the belt holders, one of the champs at 126, who has a win over Raymond Ford and a draw with Ray Vargas, is about to fight Sam Goodman, whose best win is against Rais Alim, one of the surging prospects at the time at 122. Nick Ball's about to fight Sam Goodman. So Goodman was supposed to be one of Naoya Inoue's last opponents, but pulled out because he had a cut. So Goodman's going up from 122 to 126 to challenge Nick Ball for the WBA featherweight title. And then you've also got Anthony Kakache, fresh off his stoppage win over Lee Wood, fighting Raymond Ford at 130. So Raymond Ford has been at 130 for a fight or two, looking good. Kakache is a former 130-pound title holder. Remember when he stopped Joe Cordina, he dropped the belt so he could then fight Josh Warrington, beat him by decision, and most recently stopped Lee Wood. So yeah, that's 3 good fights right there. I wonder what else they're going to put on that card. It's not as juicy as some of the cards, like Beterbiev versus Bivol too. But, that's a really good, if those are the top 3 fights, that's pretty damn solid. But I suspect with Turki Al-Sheikh, if he's not tired of blowing a bunch of money and if he's not jaded from having dealt with this sport for a couple years now, I would like to see a couple more really good fights on this Riyadh season card coming up in on August 16th is when the Moses Atama versus Dillian White card is going to be taking place. But yeah, rest in peace, Mike McCallum as well. Yeah, they also made Oshaki Foster versus Stephen Fulton. Stephen Fulton just won a belt in a second division in that rematch against Brandon Figueroa. He's about to jump another division, try to become a 3-division champion if he can beat O'Shaquie Foster. I like that fight. I think I like that fight. Foster's had a couple close calls. I mean, he lost one of those fights when he had to earn his belt back against Robson Conceição. But yeah, Foster versus Fulton is good. I haven't thought too deeply into that one yet, though. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on all these things. If you joined us a little bit late, first of all, thanks everybody for coming through. But some of the topics that we covered in this video were Keyshawn Davis's disaster, Fabio Wardley's knockout over Justice Hooney, Canelo versus Crawford, the announcement, the official, the promotional, getting that thing situated, and then talking about who I think is going to win that one. Just my early gut instinct. I will do a full fight preview as we get a little closer to the fight date. Can't wait to do a fight preview on Usyk versus Dubois too as well. We didn't talk too much George Kambosos or Richardson Hitchens defending his belt against Kambosos. I am dropping a preview video on that one tomorrow. So please check that one out. The Richardson Hitchens versus George Kambosos fight breakdown prediction, basically. We talked Lomachenko's retirement and then Moses Atama versus Dillian White fight card. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on some of this. And if you wanted to get something out that you weren't able to in the chat, feel free to leave a comment. But I want to thank you guys for coming in. And I also want to get to a couple of your last comments. Eric Gomez said, this era with all the belts out there cloud the champion status on a lot of fighters. Yeah, you could be a multi-divisional champion and haven't fought anybody of significant note. It happens. People win the belts on vacant titles. It's usually vacant titles that are or like in the case of, what was it, at 140 when they let Raleigh Romero fight for a belt against Ishmael Barroso for a vacant belt. So then Raleigh beats him, Isaac Cruz beats Raleigh, Valenzuela beats Isaac Cruz. And it's like, all these guys are 135 guys who just walked up to 140, and the WBA is going to allow PBC to circulate that belt like that with all of these. It's only fitting that the true 140 guy, Gary Antoine Russell, beat up on Valenzuela to basically say, give me that belt back. Basically give that belt back to the true 140 pound fighters, right? Rather than to let a guy coming to the division allow his debut to be for a title when he's coming off a loss, of all things. It was crazy. So they do that sometimes. But yeah, having 4 major belts per division, it sucks. It sucks. Look, even if you're a really good fighter, do you need to be champ if you're not the best guy in the division? That's one thing that if this Riyadh conglomerate, TKO Boxing, ends up kind of gaining a stranglehold of the sport, one good thing that might come out of that is if there is one belt that matters and that the other ones kind of fall back a little bit or a lot. Yeah, champions make the belts, not the other way around. Now, belts make for a better payday, but yeah, in terms of recognition and the boxing community really looking at somebody as being like a champion, you've got to have a title defense or two, and you've got to beat one of the other top 5 guys in the division at least, right? But yeah, thanks guys once again for coming through. Jay Foreman, good to hear from you. Eric Gomez, A. Pushkin, Benji Tucker, what's up, cousin? Thanks again for coming through. I'll talk to you soon. We always talk boxing. Let's see. Ventru, thank you for coming through. Nicholas, thanks for coming through. Mark, thank you. But yeah, until next time, again, it's been a while since the last time I did one of these live chats. I can't wait to get on another one. Hopefully there's not as much time that elapses between now and the next one. Subswolls, thanks again for coming through. Sammy Silver. Yeah, enjoy the fight, y'all. Remember, this weekend is Richardson Hitchens versus George Kambosos. I think most of y'all are on the same page with how that one should go. But yeah, check out my preview if you get a chance tomorrow. Like this video. Please smash that like button if you haven't. Yeah, I'm Wood. Thanks for coming in.